The importance of an open, inquiring mind. The difference between a scientist and a believer is also worthy of note. One may adhere to a belief, but everyone must necessarily have a mind which is open to explore and know. That open, inquiring mind, the mind of a scientist, is an entirely different mind from that of a believer. We can and must respect the beliefs of others, but we cannot have a discussion based on such beliefs. Both of us may be wrong. A discussion between two people, both of whom are committed to certain beliefs, is purely a dialogue between two missionaries. It is better to respect the other person's belief and have a simple human relationship. Discussions are useless. All you can do is ask, "What is your belief?" Some people are curious. If you are curious, you can ask. But I would not ask because the other person is acceptable to me along with his or her beliefs. I need not know what they are. This is a healthy attitude to have towards a person. But any discussion based on beliefs is useless. No one wins and no one loses. Each person always comes back with better arguments. Such discussions, therefore, are useless. They have no value. There is another type of discussion called Vitanda, wherein one person makes a statement with which the other person always disagrees. Why? Merely because the other person said it. Due to jealousy or some other reason, one person always tries to prove the other person wrong. Such a discussion is also useless. A fourth type of discussion, one that concerns us here, is called Samvada, a discussion between a teacher and a student, Guru-Sishya Samvada. In the teacher-student relationship, the student has already accepted the other person as a teacher and therefore looks up to him or her. Even though there is a dialogue between them, the attitude is entirely different. The discussion being based on the student's acceptance that I am a student and this person is my teacher. This attitude prevails until or unless the person thought to be a teacher proves to be otherwise. The moment you discover the person has nothing to teach, you can become friends. But when you have to learn from someone, you look up to that person. If you do not understand what the teacher is saying, you give the benefit of the doubt to the teacher, even though he or she may sometimes appear to be contradictory, seeming to have said something previously that is not in harmony with what is being said now, as we will see in the Gita.
Dialogue between teacher and student. In a Guru-Shishya Samvada, the subject matter can be anything. Here in the Gita, the subject matter is Brahma Vidya and Yoga Shastra in one word, Vedanta. The Guru is Sri Bhagavan Krishna, referred to as Vasudeva's son, and the student is Arjuna, called Partha here because he is Partha's son. He is also called Kunteya, the son of Kunti. Arjuna has a number of other names: Dhananjaya, Savyashakshi, Gudakesha, and so on. But Arjuna is his popular name. Between Arjuna, the student, and Lord Krishna, the teacher, there is a discussion called Samvada. The Gita is the body of knowledge being taught and is therefore the Samvada.
Giving the teacher the benefit of the doubt. If it looks as though the teacher is being contradictory, the student gives the benefit of the doubt to the teacher. This is how we define a student. As a student, one need not take the blame upon oneself. The teacher can be asked a question. Previously, such and such was said, and now this is being said. Why this difference? You said Brahman is without qualities, nirguna, and now you say it is with qualities, saguna. How can Brahman be saguna? You say it is beyond the mind, that it is not available as an object for the mind. At the same time, you say one sees oneself, the Atma, with the mind. Manasa pashyati. How can one see the Atma with the mind? And how is one going to know that one is seeing the Atma? It looks as though the Shruti herself is contradictory. To say that Brahman cannot be objectified by the mind and that it has to be recognized by the mind seems to be a contradiction. But it is not a contradiction, it is perfect. If it looks like a contradiction to the student, then he or she can ask a question, prashna. And when the student waits for the right time to ask a question, it is called a pariprashna, based on his or her faith, shraddha, in the teacher. As a teacher, one cannot contradict oneself. A teacher who contradicts himself or herself does not know the subject matter. Nor can a teacher simply learn along with the student and teach, since this creates situations wherein both the teacher and the student may suddenly discover a new fact never known to either of them before, a fact that contradicts everything they knew thus far. This is not why one goes to a teacher. Teaching is not meant to be exploratory. The teaching then, or the teacher then, should know exactly what he or she is talking about and not be contradictory. The attitude implied by the term Guru-Sishya Samvada is especially relevant here. Since the entire teaching is itself a means of knowledge, it is not philosophical speculation, nor are we attracted to this kind of learning out of a simple academic interest. The teaching has a value, and the value is myself alone. The teaching is about myself. I have a value for freedom, and this value makes me want to know. As a person, I want to be free, and I want to learn for no other purpose than to be free. Since there is a value there, and the teaching itself is a means of knowledge, there must necessarily be a certain attitude on my part towards this teaching and the teacher. That the teaching has to come from a teacher in the form of a dialogue is because it is something to be understood, something to be followed, not swallowed. In a belief, there is nothing to follow, only something to swallow, something to accept totally without question. Any questioning that may take place is meant only to establish what the belief is, which is not really questioning at all. This is why there are so many attempts to establish historical proofs that a certain person existed. Whether someone existed or not is not the issue, however. The teaching is the issue. Therefore, if you look into the teaching, if you are interested in what is being taught, your whole attitude and approach are different. Here, a dialogue implies teaching received from a teacher, meaning that this knowledge has to be received from a teacher and the subject matter has to be understood.
Two types of subject matter. There are two types of subject matter, sadhya and siddha. Sadhya is what is to be accomplished. If you want to know how to go to heaven, for example, first you have to know what heaven is, and then you have to decide to buy a ticket. You are told that the ticket or punya for heaven can be gained by doing good deeds. You must also hold onto the punya you have earned, which means you must not do any improper actions, papa, while you are earning your ticket to heaven. Only then will you go to heaven after death. This is all very straightforward and is not a question-answer situation. Any question related to sadhya is only to understand how to do something, like cooking, for example. An Indian woman who wants to know how to make pizza will ask certain questions. The situation is very simple. You just tell her how to do it a few times until she knows how and the topic is over. It is just a matter of whether she has understood what you have said. There is an order governing how everything is to be done. Certain elements are involved and therefore must be understood. What has to be done is also understood, and that's the end of it. One may do it or not do it. By practice, one eventually acquires the knack of it. If a person keeps on making pizza, hopefully with some sympathetic people around, he or she will certainly master the art of pizza making. This is sadhya then. There is no questioning here. When the subject matter is something you have to accomplish later, when it is dealing with means and ends, sadhana and sadhya, proper questioning is not a part of the whole approach. This is true even if the subject matter is Vedic ritual. There are many choices available. You can do it this way or that way. You need not do it at all, or you can do something else entirely and achieve the same result. There is more than one way to go to heaven. There are 100 different ways, one of which you can choose. Why you want to go is another matter. Thus, when sadhya is involved, there can be choice.
No choice in knowledge. There is no choice involved, however, when what is to be accomplished is already accomplished, siddha, but not understood. Knowledge is not open to choice. It is always true to its object. For example, knowledge of an apple is always true to the object apple, even if I will it to be otherwise. Nor do I have a choice in knowledge once the means of knowledge and the object of knowledge are aligned. If my eyes are open and they are not defective and the mind is not elsewhere, I will necessarily see what is in front of me. What choice do I have? To know an already accomplished fact requires proper questioning in order to remove whatever may be blocking the knowledge from taking place. Why should you be denied the knowledge of yourself once it is unfolded? What exactly is the obstruction? Is it that you do not follow what is being said? And once the obstructions have been identified, they have to be removed one by one because you are Brahman. The whole pursuit then is one of removing all doubts. Because this is knowledge of an already accomplished fact, the knowledge has to be immediate. It cannot be indirect. If it does not happen in spite of the teaching, then there is some obstruction which is in the form of either error, vagueness, or doubt. The obstructions are removed in the dialogue between the teacher and the student.
The significance of questioning. Where there is understanding involved, questioning is imperative. This does not mean that you should question all the time. What is meant is that a questioning mind is necessary because without questioning you can never gain clarity. Therefore, the teaching itself consists of a number of questions. As teachers, we ourselves raise questions and keep answering them. If the student still has questions, he or she should ask those questions in order to know, since we are not dealing with simple belief here. And if we find that something is a belief, we can say, "This is a belief," thereby ending the matter. We do not try to establish a belief. beyond establishing that it is a belief. For example, to say, "This is my mother," is a belief because there is no way of proving it. How do you know two babies did not get switched? There may be a lot of corroborative evidence, but still it is a belief. It is not direct perception. There are a lot of beliefs, and there is nothing wrong with beliefs as long as we understand them as beliefs. But there are also a lot of things we have to know, and where we have to know, questions are very important and are allowed. The Gita was presented as a dialogue between a teacher and a student to emphasize that the subject matter is one for understanding, not for believing.
Commentaries on the Gita. Shankara said that he wrote his commentary so that people could analyze and understand what the true meaning of the Gita Shastra is, even though it had already been so elaborately commented upon by others. These earlier commentaries, no matter how definitive they were, sometimes differed from one another and in some cases were even opposed to each other. Because these various works were confusing to those who did not understand the Shastra properly, Shankara decided to undertake this work in order to clarify what the Gita is actually saying. Since Shankara's time, there have been numerous commentaries and translations in various languages and of various degrees of clarity. None has matched Shankara's analysis of the Gita. His commentary is extremely cogent and consistent from beginning to end. For instance, whenever bhakti came up, he discussed it in its proper context. Whenever Ishvara was mentioned, even though Lord Krishna used the first person singular, Shankara made it very clear that what was meant was the Lord, Ishvara, Paramatma. When the Gita is analyzed properly, the analysis must be rational. It should not go against reason. A commentary on the Gita should be in keeping with the words that are there. It should honor all the rules of grammar and syntax. What is said before and what is said later should also be taken into account.
The need for inquiry. Since the Gita is a book that contains only what is said in the Upanishads, this is all the more reason for any commentary on it to be reasonable. Nothing should contradict the source book. Our understanding of the Gita should definitely be in keeping with all of these various factors. Only then can there be real understanding. Whether the Gita says this or that is something that must be understood. We are not trying to make the Gita say what we want it to say. We are trying to understand what it says, and for this we need to inquire and be objective. This is why, before approaching the Gita, a few verses called the Gita Dhyanam are sung in praise of it, whereby we invoke the Mother Gita to reveal the truth contained in the Gita Shastra. These verses are a prayer to the Gita herself, to the Gita as the Mother Shruti, to the Gita as Bhagavan, the Lord. Having invoked the Gita in this way, only then do we try to extract the exact meaning of what it is saying. The Gita is like a mirror, just as the Upanishads are, a mirror of words wherein we can see ourselves very clearly. If the world is not separate from me, and if Ishvara also is not separate from me, then I should be able to see this truth in the words of the Gita. The prayer is for the sake of understanding the Gita properly, which is understanding myself. In the brief discussion of the Gita prayer verses that follows, you will come across sentences requiring further elucidation in order for you to enjoy clarity. This clarity will come as the Gita is unfolded. In the meantime, please bear with the brevity and proceed. This is the end of the introduction to Gita by Pujya Swami Dayananda Saraswati. To access the full volume and other books and audiobooks, please visit our bookstore at www.avgbooks.org.